Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Please be seated. Before I continue, I would like to recognize a few guests. We actually have some World War II veterans here. Ira Rigger, if you could. Construction battalions known as the Seabees in the Pacific Theater. He was at Guam, Peleliu, and the Battle of Iwo Jima. How about that? Because of his experiences, he became very successful when he returned home. Home improvement business became a major swimming pool supplier for the people of Washington, D.C. Harry Miller is here today, a veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. I know some of you have heard of the Battle of the Bulge, but you may not know that some of our soldiers were only 16 years old, and he's one of them. He ended up serving with the Army in Korea and with the Air Force during Vietnam. He just enjoyed military life. We really want to thank Konstantin Rizopoulos. Served with the Army, Air Force during World War II in the Philippines, and after the war earned his bachelor's and master's degree in mathematics and went on to teach mathematics at the high school and university level. Thank you. A pleasure to have you, Konstantin. Privileged to have here today there are several family members of those who served bravely during the Battle of Iwo Jima, but who are no longer with us. Could the family members stand if any of them are here? There we go. Yes, 75 years ago is when this battle began. And thank you all for being with here today to mark this significant historic event. Let me now welcome to the podium a fellow veteran of Vietnam, Josiah Bunting III, chairman of the Friends of the National World War II Memorial. Mr. Bunting.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's important, I think, for all of us to recognize that we're standing and sitting on hallowed ground. We're at the midpoint between the monument commemorating the founder of our country and its most important preserver. We have a generation coming along which many of us believe is not being sufficiently well and inspirationally instructed in the history, particularly the recent military history of our country. And one of our missions at the World War II Memorial is to work with high school teachers in the summertime. We bring in almost 100 of them from all over the United States, many of them with family connections, and spend several weeks with them going over the history of the Second World War. One of the things that we try to communicate, and I think these ceremonies help with that, is that sometimes the United States and its citizenry is summoned by a common objective which effaces and which wipes out all of the petty political differences that we have from time to time. I always have the feeling when I am here that this is one of those places and one of those moments. Who cannot be inspired by the legacy, the living legacy of those that we honor today? Let me mention just finally in passing, many people don't realize this, but veterans who fought in battles like the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge, many of them were looking forward to a 15-day furlough in the United States on their way to the Pacific for more. Think of that for a moment, the ultimate sacrifice. In any case, welcome to all of you. It's an honor and a privilege for all of us. We look forward particularly to hearing from our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Thank you for your inspiring remarks. I'm now privileged to welcome to the podium our keynote speaker today, General Mark Milley, the 20th Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. General Milley is the nation's highest-ranking military officer and the principal military advisor to the President, the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Council, Congress. Prior to becoming chairman on October 1st, 2019, he serves as 39th Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army. His father, Alexander Milley, served with the U.S. Marines in the Battle of Iwo Jima. He was actually a Navy corpsman, which is the most dangerous job that the military has to offer. Ladies and gentlemen, my honor to introduce to you General Milley. Thanks. Thank you. All right. Yes, sir. Appreciate that.
Well, it's deeply humbling for me to be here today, and as you just heard, my father served at Iwo Jima, so it's doubly humbling for me to be here today. On February 1945, 3 Marine divisions, about 70,000 or so United States Marines and Navy corpsmen, backed up by 400 ships, about 100 more ships that are in the United States Navy today, made the assault landings on Iwo. And therein lied a campaign that is the bloodiest campaign in American history per square mile. As you heard a few minutes ago, Iwo Jima was only 2 miles by 4 miles, about 7 or 8 square miles. There were no civilians on the island. It was defended by about 22,000 committed Japanese Marines, in fact, the butchers of Nanking, as my father relayed to me one day. And the assault divisions, the 4th Marine Division on the right, the 5th Marine Division on the left, and the 3rd Marine Division in reserve, all landed in the early morning hours of the 19th. Preceding them, for the last 66 days, Iwo Jima had a pre-assault fires that were unknown in military history. From 15 December 1944 until today, 1945, Army Air Corps and naval gunfire pounded Iwo Jima with more ordnance than any 8 square miles of the Earth's surface in military history. My father and those fellow Marines and corpsmen that were hitting the beach were told there were no Japanese left alive. And they hit the beach and they got in about 800 meters or so, and they hit a trigger line, and the Japanese sprung an engagement area. And then all hell broke loose. And they were pinned down on the beach, and they couldn't get the Marines ashore to reinforce, and all the assault regiments were just sitting there getting pounded. And then they began slugging it out, inch by inch, yard by yard, for the next 36 days, at a cost of almost 7,000 Marine lives and Navy corpsman lives, and another 34,000 wounded in action. Almost 50% casualties were suffered on the island of Iwo Jima. And of the 22,000 Japanese, only 1,000 ever lived to talk about it. I had an opportunity to go to Iwo Jima last year with my Japanese counterpart, the Japanese Chief of Staff of the Army. And it's an incredibly humbling experience just to walk through that island. And I walked the beach that my father landed on, Blue Beach 1, to the far right, 1,000, 1,500 meters or so from Mount Suribachi. And walked through the Japanese bunkers and just began to imagine what hell on earth was like. And that was Iwo Jima. It's an unbelievable battle. It's an unbelievable battle in an entire war of unbelievable battles. Today we have a veteran of the Philippines. We have a veteran of Iwo Jima, and we have a veteran of the Battle of the Bulge. What we don't have are veterans of World War I. Between 1914 and 1945, 150 million people around the world were slaughtered in the conduct of war. While my father in World War II hit the beach at Kwajalein, Saipan, Tinian, and Iwo Jima, there were many others in other parts of the world, in Italy, at Normandy, in the Eastern Front. They were also fighting. In fact, in June 1944, my father hit the beach at Saipan with the 4th Marine Division, and his brother was at Normandy on the other side of the world. It's an incredible tale of valor. From 1914 to 1945, the world was engaged in 2 of the biggest wars that have ever been fought in the history of humanity. But they fought for something, and they fought for a better peace. So when 1945 came around, it was that generation, the greatest generation, who bequeathed to you and I a set of freedoms, and bequeathed to you and I a world order that has held good for almost 100 years now. We're in our 75th year of no great power war. 75 years. To my knowledge, that's only been done twice before in human history. One was from 1648 to the middle of the 1700s or so, when there was no continental-wide great power war on the continent of Europe. And then the Napoleonic Wars happened. And then after the Napoleonic Wars, they put in the Concert of Europe. And that held from 1815 to 1914. And the world broke down into World War I. And then we went through 1914 to 1945. And in 1945, the people that were in power, the generals of the day, the politicians, the presidents, the queens, and the kings said, we can never do that again. We can never sacrifice 150